So with joining in on play, there's some similarities with initiating play, which is the prior lesson, and joining in on play. But with joining in, it actually can be a little bit more complicated for the child because with initiating play, you have a little bit more control as to perhaps who you might want to ask to play and what you're suggesting to play. If I wanted to play marbles and I had a cool marble set and I approached somebody who I thought maybe might want to do that, it's up to me really to initiate that, and there's a little bit more of control. When you join a play situation, we try to help the children understand that they have less control over the game, meaning that it's already been established. Kids are already playing, and so now you're coming in, and so there's a few more steps that are a little bit different with that. Like initiating play, though, we do have two lessons under joining. Um, One is more around your traditional 3 or 4 steps to kind of smoothly get in, and then the second lesson, and we'll have close-up slides of both of these. First lesson is pretty basic, and then the second lesson involves joining in on a pretend play situation, which is a slightly a different dynamic when you're doing that. And so the two lessons will break that down a bit. So more slides to follow, and we'll get into the mechanics of joining in on play. So with joining a play activity, there's a number of steps. The first one, like so many of the lessons, have to do with the child basically starting off the interaction in a good way by saying hi and a person's name. And when they're talking to somebody, especially in the very beginning, to be looking towards that person. Now, when a child joins a large group of kids, or even a small group of kids, they're not addressing everybody at the same time. It's not like they're giving a speech. They have to zero in on 1 or 2 kids that they have some relationship with. Ideally, they would know the person's name, and those are the two that they're really addressing. So they go towards the kids that we would consider the friendlies within a group, the kids that have the highest probability of opening up and letting them join in. So they ask them to pick 1 or 2 kids, go in, use their names, and then there's a lot of primer questions leading up to asking to play. The first one is, what are you doing? It's a very non-threatening, very easygoing question that doesn't even have to be answered. It's just kind of a primer to lead you into the next question that follows. Using words instead of being silly on the top of the sheet is also the theme throughout this lesson. So a lot of the children in their earlier years would be silly and or goofy to get attention, and under stress, this might come out a bit. So we really do promote that the kids use their words, especially from second grade on. That from more and more as they get older, using your words is what it's all about when you're connecting with your friends, and not so much being silly. So that goes right into step 3 and 4. Step number 3 is a compliment. And here are some examples. That looks like fun. Hey, you're good. It could be something like, nice shot, way to go. The idea is that as the child it goes in the direction of asking to play, they start off with that, what are you doing, which was step number 2, kind of an easygoing question, into something more like a compliment, and then they ask, can I play? The whole thing about the compliment, it basically the group makes a decision within a few moments as to whether somebody coming in will add value to that group or not. Now, for your child, they might add a lot of value. In fact, of course they would. Why wouldn't they? But the whole thing is that other kids have to make that judgment. It's not the adults making that judgment. So using things like compliments periodically sends the message that they are people who bring value to a situation, because it's pleasing for the listener to hear something along the lines of a compliment. So joining in on pretend play is very similar, but it's a little bit more of an unknown, because unless the child's played that pretend play scenario before, because it could be a crazy game of tag. I'm working with some kids now. It's called zombie tag. It's a whole different set of rules that goes with your normal tag game. It could be playing pirates or spaceships. It could be being on the swings, pretending you're spaceships flying through space. it just really can be a number of different ideas. There's so many options when it comes to pretend play that there's just a couple extra steps to help clarify, what the actual play situation is. The first step being, if you can do this, just watch and learn. See, just kind of watch and see, what are they playing. Is it tag? Is it hide and seek? Is it boy versus girl? Is it sound like more of a Star Wars kind of game? You see kids swinging pretend lightsabers. It could be a number of different things. So if you have an idea of what it might be, that's different than just kind of going in very cold. And of course, when you have that idea, you kind of get close to engage the kids so as the child gets close, they once again hi. In this actual step, it doesn't say the name, though we do coach that. It's hi with the person's name. And then, what are you playing? Very similar to what are you doing. It could be that. It could be, what are you playing? It doesn't really matter, but it's a very easygoing, open-ended kind of question. And then right away, and you're not even waiting necessarily for a real good answer, and you kind of get into, hey, that looks like fun. There's the compliment that we talked about earlier. Something that is relatively pleasing and non-threatening to the listener. It could be, that looks like a lot of fun. Wow, you guys are awesome pirates. Or, hey, that looks really cool. Just anything that really kind of just presents the messages that, hey, I come into this group and I'm a fun guy. I'm somebody who kind of is a crowd pleaser instead of a crowd downer, because the group does have to make that decision early on, actually within a matter of seconds, for someone to kind of enter into a group successfully. And then finally, the fifth step is, can I play? Or it could be, I want to play, or hey, I want to do this. So again, there's a lead up to the final question of, can I play? Now, number 6 is, yes, that's great, you're in, you're playing. A lot of the children that we work with, when they kind of get involved in a situation, they have their expectations too, what the pretend play is. Remember, this is not something that is very concrete, like Foursquare kickball or playing basketball. It's rather open-ended, and it can change over time. So that leaves the opportunity for the child to really want to maybe push their ideas on how to play. And we really just recommend for the children that if you're joining a situation, you really want to take a step back and kind of just go with the flow. It's different if you are initiating play. That's a position of more power. But when you join, you kind of have to get in there and really ideally enhance the overall play experience of the group in general. I mean, it doesn't have to get that complicated, but by and large, in a sense, that is what's happening. So the idea is to just kind of get in and just add to the fun and not be a game changer once you're in. If the children say no, then you ask someone else. And like the prior lesson just before, when we talked about that, with the adults involved who are working with the child, you try to set up a situation where that child is initially going to be responded to with a yes, especially as they're learning this skill. That can be done in a small group situation, a play date situation. It can be done in a lunch bunch, and it can be done with someone going into a recess and working with the child or a group of children, ideally. So that would be the joining in play and pretend play.